Welcome, dear listener, to another gentle journey through the corridors of history. Tonight, we invite you to settle into comfort, perhaps pulling a soft blanket closer, as we explore a world that might seem both familiar and utterly foreign to your modern sensibilities. Close your eyes, if you wish, and imagine yourself stepping back through time, leaving behind the reassuring hum of your hot water heater, the gleaming porcelain of your bathroom, and the simple luxury of turning a tap to release clean, warm water. Tonight's exploration takes us to the 18th century, a time when the very concept of cleanliness bore little resemblance to our contemporary understanding. Picture, if you will, a world where the wealthy drape themselves in silks and velvets while harboring secrets beneath their finery that would shock our modern sensibilities. This was an era when perfume served not as enhancement, but as necessity, and when the absence of soap and water was compensated by powders, pomades, and the persistent hope that appearance might triumph over reality. The air itself tells a different story in this distant time. Imagine walking through the streets of London or Paris in 1750, where the morning mist carries not the clean scent of rain-washed stone, but a complex tapestry of human existence, unfiltered by modern sanitation. The wealthy emerge from their carriages in clouds of lavender and rosewater, their elaborate wigs powdered white as fresh snow. Yet beneath these carefully constructed facades lies a reality that would perplex our contemporary minds. This was a world where physicians warned against the dangers of water touching the skin, where the opening of pores was considered an invitation to disease, and where the very act of bathing was viewed with the same suspicion we might reserve for consuming poison. We will wander together through 4 distinct realms of this aromatic past. First, you will experience the daily rituals of hygiene as lived by ordinary Europeans, discovering what it truly meant to maintain one's person when water was viewed with suspicion and cleanliness was measured by entirely different standards. Then, we shall visit the perfumed courts of Marie Antoinette, where luxury and squalor existed in the most peculiar harmony. Our journey will take us beneath the cobblestones of Paris, where archaeology reveals the unglamorous infrastructure of urban life, before finally transporting us eastward to the steamy chambers of Ottoman bathhouses, where an entirely different philosophy of cleanliness created sanctuaries of warmth and ritual. In this twilight hour, as you prepare to drift between wakefulness and dreams, allow yourself to be transported to a time when the human relationship with cleanliness was governed by fear, superstition, and a medical understanding that seems almost magical in its wrongness. Feel the weight of heavy fabrics against skin that has not felt water for weeks. Smell the mingling of expensive perfumes with the honest odors of human existence, and marvel at how our ancestors navigated a world where being clean meant something entirely different from what we understand today. So breathe deeply, let your shoulders relax, and prepare to discover what clean really meant in an age when such definitions were written not in soap and water, but in powder, perfume, and the persistent ingenuity of human adaptation. Imagine yourself awakening in a modest but respectable household in the year 1740. Somewhere in the heart of Europe, the morning light filters through small, thick-paned windows, casting gentle shadows across the wooden floors of your chamber. You stir beneath heavy, woolen blankets, feeling the familiar weight of the linen shift that has been your companion through the night's sleep. This garment, this simple undergarment, represents the cornerstone of 18th century hygiene philosophy, and today you will understand why your ancestors placed such faith in cloth over water. Rise slowly from your bed and notice how the morning air carries a coolness that seems to seep through the very walls. Central heating is a concept that would not grace most homes for another century and a half, and so the chill reminds you why our forebears viewed the prospect of removing clothing and exposing skin to water with such reasonable dread. Your breath might mist slightly in this cool air, And you can imagine how the thought of submerging oneself in a tub of cold water would seem not just uncomfortable, but genuinely dangerous to both body and spirit. The first act of your morning hygiene routine involves no water whatsoever. Instead, you reach for the fresh linen shirt that has been laid out for your use. This clean garment represents the cutting edge of 18th century cleanliness theory. The physicians and learned men of your time firmly believed that cleanliness comes not from washing the body, but from washing the clothes that touch the body. Picture yourself carefully removing your night shift, which has absorbed the oils and perspiration of your evening's rest, and replacing it with this fresh linen that feels crisp and clean against your skin. The logic of this practice reveals itself when you consider the medical understanding of your era. Water, particularly hot water, is believed to open the pores of the skin, making the body vulnerable to the entrance of disease-carrying vapors and corrupted air. The learned physicians have observed that those who bathe frequently seem to fall ill more often than those who maintain their distance from water. And while we now understand this correlation resulted from contaminated water sources rather than the act of bathing itself, the conclusion seemed entirely reasonable to the minds of the 18th century. Your linen shirt serves as a second skin, one that can be cleaned and purified without subjecting your actual skin to the perceived dangers of immersion. The wealthy might change their linen twice or even 3 times per day, each fresh shirt representing a renewal of cleanliness. The fabric itself was understood to draw impurities from the body, much like a sponge absorbs liquid. And the regular changing of these garments was seen as the most effective and safest method of maintaining bodily purity. But your morning routine extends beyond the simple donning of clean linen. Approach the small table where your toilet items await your attention. Here you will find the tools that define 18th century hygiene: a silver or pewter basin, filled not with water for washing, but with fine white powder. This powder, made from rice flour, wheat starch, or for the wealthy, ground orris root, and other expensive materials, serves multiple purposes in your daily transformation from natural human to socially acceptable being. Take a moment to observe this powder as you would examine any precious substance. In the gentle morning light, it appears almost luminous, each particle catching and reflecting the weak sunbeams that penetrate your chamber. The scent rises faintly from the basin, perhaps carrying hints of lavender or rose oil that have been mixed into the preparation. This powder represents hours of labor by servants or family members who have ground and sifted the ingredients to achieve this fine, almost flour-like consistency. Begin the application of powder to your face and neck, using a soft brush made from badger hair or perhaps rabbit fur. Feel the gentle tickle of the bristles against your skin as you work the powder into every crease and curve of your features. The powder serves several functions that our modern minds might find curious. First, it absorbs the natural oils that your skin produces, creating a matte finish that was considered the height of fashion and health. Second, it provides a uniform color and texture that hides blemishes, sun damage, and the various imperfections that a life without sunscreen and modern skincare inevitably produces. Most importantly, powder creates a barrier between your skin and the outside world, just as your linen shirt protects your torso from the dangers of direct exposure. This layer of powder shields your face from the harmful vapors and corrupted air that were believed to cause illness and moral corruption. The whiter the powder, the more pure and elevated the wearer appeared, both literally and figuratively rising above the darker, earthier tones associated with laborers who worked in the sun, and those unfortunate souls who could not afford to maintain such elaborate barriers against the natural world. As you continue this powdering process, notice how the transformation occurs gradually. Your natural skin tone disappears beneath the white coating, and you begin to take on the ethereal, almost ghostly appearance that marked the fashionable classes of your era. This alabaster complexion was not merely cosmetic preference, but represented a philosophical statement about humanity's relationship with nature. To appear natural, to show the effects of sun and weather and the honest sweat of labor, was considered vulgar and somehow morally suspect. The application of powder extends beyond your face to include your hands, your neck, and any other exposed areas of skin. Your fingernails require special attention, not for trimming and shaping as we might expect, but for the careful application of powder beneath and around them. Long fingernails on both men and women were a sign of leisure and refinement, indicating that the wearer performed no manual labor that might break or soil these delicate extensions of the self. Now, turn your attention to your hair, or more accurately, to the elaborate wig that will crown your transformation. If you possess the means for such luxury, your wig awaits on its wooden stand, sculpture of human or horsehair that has been carefully arranged into the fashionable style of your station and era. If you are of more modest means, your own hair has been dressed and powdered the previous evening and carefully preserved through the night with the aid of a special cap designed to maintain the elaborate construction. The powdering of hair represents perhaps the most time-consuming and visually dramatic aspect of your morning routine. Using a large, soft brush, you begin to work the white powder through every strand, every curl, every carefully constructed wave of your coiffure. The powder clings to the pomade and various styling compounds that hold your hair in place, creating a uniformed white coating that transforms your natural hair color into the fashionable white or gray that marked the sophisticated classes. This process requires both skill and patience. Too little powder and patches of natural hair color show through, creating an unkempt and impoverished appearance. Too much powder, and the weight begins to compromise the structure of the hairstyle, causing elaborate curls to droop and carefully constructed height to collapse. The ideal application creates a smooth, even coating that appears almost sculpted, as if your hair has been carved from finest marble rather than grown from your own scalp. The powder itself creates a small snowstorm in your chamber, tiny particles dancing in the morning light as they settle on every surface. Your clothing, your furniture, even the very air you breathe becomes tinged with this white dust. Servants will later spend considerable time cleaning and dusting the room, removing the evidence of your transformation. But for now, you exist in this cloud of artificial purity, breathing in the slightly sweet scent of rice starch and ground orris root. Consider the sensory experience of this elaborate morning ritual. The powder carries a faint, dusty smell that mingles with whatever perfumes and pomades have been incorporated into the mixture. Your scalp tingles slightly from the weight and texture of the powder working against your skin. The fine particles seem to coat the inside of your nostrils and settle on your tongue, giving even your sense of taste a powdery, slightly metallic quality that will remain with you throughout the day. Your reflection in the small, imperfect mirror reveals a being that bears little resemblance to the natural human who awakened in this bed. Your face appears pale and ethereal, your hair white as winter snow, your entire appearance suggesting someone who exists above and apart from the messy realities of earthly existence. This transformation was not considered artificial or false, but rather represented the triumph of civilization and refinement over base nature. The final element of your morning hygiene routine involves the application of perfume. Though the 18th century understanding of fragrance differs significantly from our contemporary notions, your perfume serves not merely to smell pleasant, but to actively combat the odors that your clothing and body will inevitably produce throughout the day. These scents were often powerful and distinctive, designed to announce your presence and mask any less pleasant aromas that might emanate from your person. The perfumes of your era tend toward heavy, musky scents that could overwhelm more delicate sensibilities. Rosewater, lavender oil, bergamot, and various animal musks combine to create fragrances that seem almost aggressive in their intensity. You apply these scents liberally to your clothing, your hair, and the few exposed areas of your skin, creating an aromatic bubble that will travel with you throughout your day. Imagine the cumulative effect of dozens or hundreds of people who have undergone similar morning transformations gathering in the same space. The air would be thick with competing perfumes, powder dust, the various pomades and oils used to maintain elaborate hairstyles. This aromatic complexity was not considered unpleasant, but rather represented the sophisticated interplay of refined humanity choosing to exist above and apart from the simple smells of nature. As your morning routine reaches its conclusion, take a moment to appreciate the elaborate construction that is your 18th century self. You have armor made of linen and powder, weapons of perfume and pomade, and a philosophy that places cleanliness in a realm of appearance rather than the dangerous territory of water and soap. You are clean according to the understanding of your era, protected from disease and moral corruption by layers of cloth and powder. Shield your true self from the perceived dangers of the natural world. Step carefully as you move about your chamber, mindful of the powder that continues to drift from your hair and clothing like a gentle, constant snowfall. This is your reality. This is your normal. And this is how you will present yourself to the world throughout the day ahead, as the morning transforms into the fuller rhythms of your 18th century day. You begin to understand that your elaborate morning preparation was merely the foundation for an ongoing performance of cleanliness that must be maintained from dawn until dusk. The powdered perfection you achieved in your chamber will face constant challenges as you move through a world that seems determined to compromise your carefully constructed purity. Venture now into the common areas of your household, where the morning light reveals the accumulated evidence of yesterday's human habitation. The wooden floors bear the faint outlines of muddy footprints, despite the best efforts of servants to scrub them clean each evening. The air carries a complex mixture of smells that tells the story of life lived in close quarters, with little ventilation and limited water for cleaning. Wood smoke from the cooking fires mingles with the lingering aromas of the previous evening's meal. The mustiness of woolen textiles that have absorbed months of human presence, and the underlying earthiness that seems to emanate from the very walls themselves. Your movement through these spaces requires a particular kind of grace and awareness. Each step must be calculated to avoid disturbing the powder that creates small clouds around your feet. Each gesture must be controlled to prevent the disruption of your carefully arranged hair and clothing. You exist now as a work of art in constant danger of being smudged by the realities of daily existence. Consider the peculiar challenge of eating while maintaining your powdered appearance. The morning meal awaits on the wooden table, perhaps consisting of bread, cheese, and small ale that serves as the safer alternative to questionable water sources. But observe how differently you must approach this simple act of nourishment when your face has been transformed into a canvas of white powder and your clothing represents hours of careful preparation. Each bite must be taken with extraordinary care to avoid disturbing the powder around your mouth. You develop a technique of eating that resembles a delicate dance, spraying food to your lips with precise movements that minimize the risk of smearing your artificial complexion. The bread leaves tiny crumbs that contrast starkly against the white of your powder, requiring frequent and discreet brushing to maintain your appearance. The act of drinking presents even greater challenges, as any liquid that touches your lips threatens to create telltale streaks in your carefully applied coating. Watch as your family members or household companions navigate similar challenges. Around the breakfast table, each person represents a different level of success in maintaining their morning transformation. The children, if present, show the inevitable signs of their inability to sustain such artificial perfection, with powder, smudged, and clothing already bearing the evidence of their more natural approach to existence. The adults maintain better discipline, but even they show small signs of the ongoing battle between human nature and social expectation. The very act of conversation requires modification when your face has been transformed into this powdered mask. Excessive animation risks cracking the powder around your eyes and mouth, creating unsightly lines and gaps that reveal the natural skin beneath. You learn to speak with controlled expressions, to smile with restraint, and to avoid the kind of hearty laughter that might compromise your carefully constructed facade. As the morning progresses toward midday, you begin to understand the constant vigilance required to maintain 18th century cleanliness. Every surface you touch threatens to transfer oils and dirt to your clothing. Every breath of air carries particles that may settle on your powdered face. Every movement risks disturbing the elaborate architecture of your hair and the precise placement of your clothing. The maintenance of your appearance becomes a series of small, constant adjustments throughout the day. You carry with you a small, silver compact containing additional powder for emergency touch-ups. The mirror inside is no larger than your palm, but it serves as your constant companion in the ongoing battle against the forces of nature that seek to expose your humanity beneath your artificial perfection. Observe how the quality of light changes your appearance throughout the day. In the bright sunlight that streams through windows, your powder takes on an almost ethereal quality, making you appear ghost-like and otherworldly. But this same light also reveals imperfections with harsh clarity, showing every streak where perspiration has disturbed your makeup, every place where the powder has worn thin or accumulated in unflattering ways. The afternoon brings its own particular challenges to your maintenance routine. As your body warms throughout the day, you begin to perspire, despite your best efforts to remain cool and composed. But perspiration and powder create a peculiar alchemy that transforms both substances into something entirely different. The moisture turns the powder into a paste-like substance that can streak and clump, creating an appearance that suggests dissolution rather than refinement. You develop strategies for managing this inevitable process. Perhaps you retreat periodically to your chamber for complete renewal of your powder, or you learn to dab discreetly at problematic areas with a clean cloth. The more experienced practitioners of 18th century hygiene develop an almost supernatural ability toward detect the early signs of powder failure and address them before they become visible to others. The social implications of your appearance maintenance extend far beyond personal vanity. In a world where your external presentation directly correlates to your perceived moral worth and social standing, the failure to maintain your artificial purity could result in real consequences for your reputation and prospects. A streaked complexion might suggest poor breeding or insufficient means to maintain proper standards. Disheveled hair could imply moral looseness or personal instability. Consider the particular challenges faced by those who must work while maintaining these standards of appearance. A merchant conducting business in the marketplace must somehow preserve his powdered dignity while handling goods and negotiating with customers who may not share his elevated standards of presentation. A woman managing household servants must maintain her ethereal appearance while overseeing activities that inevitably involve dust, smoke, and various forms of domestic chaos. The evening brings both relief and renewed challenge to your day-long performance of cleanliness. As the sun begins to set and the day's social obligations draw to a close, you face the complex process of transitioning from your public presentation to a more private state of being. But even this transition must be managed carefully to preserve what can be salvaged for the following day's routine. The removal of your day's accumulation of powder and perfume becomes an art form in itself. Using soft cloths and occasionally small amounts of spirits or wine, you begin the delicate process of cleaning away the evidence of your daily maintenance. This cleaning process reveals the stark contrast between your natural appearance and the elaborate construction you have worn throughout the day. Your real skin emerges from beneath the powder, often showing the effects of a day spent breathing through a layer of rice, starch, and various perfumed additions. Your hair requires particularly careful attention during this evening routine. Powder that has accumulated throughout the day must be brushed out carefully to avoid disturbing the underlying structure that will serve as the foundation for tomorrow's reconstruction. The pomades and oils that hold your hairstyle in place have collected dust and particles throughout the day, creating a mixture that must be managed rather than simply removed. As the complete washing and restyling of hair was typically undertaken only once per week, or even less frequently, once each week, or perhaps every 10 days if you belong to the more cautious segments of society, you must undertake a different kind of cleansing ritual that reveals the true complexity of 18th century hygiene philosophy. This is not the daily maintenance of your artificial surface, but rather the more fundamental process of addressing the human body that exists beneath your elaborate construction of cleanliness. Today is such a day, and as you prepare for this weekly renewal, you begin to understand the deep fears and beliefs that shaped your ancestors' relationship with their own flesh. The preparation for your weekly cleansing begins with the careful dismantling of the elaborate structures you have built around your natural self. Your wig, if you possess one, must be removed and placed on its stand for its own separate cleaning and maintenance. The powder that has accumulated in your natural hair throughout the week has formed a mixture with the oils and pomades that hold your coiffure in place, creating a substance that resembles neither powder nor hair, but something entirely other. Watch as you begin the delicate process of brushing this accumulation from your hair. The brush moves slowly through strands that have been molded and shaped by days of artificial construction. Each stroke releases clouds of powder that have absorbed not only the products applied to your hair, but also the dust and particles from the air you have breathed, the spaces you have inhabited, and the various substances that have settled on your person throughout the week. The powder falls like aged snow onto the cloth spread beneath your feet, creating small drifts of what was once the symbol of your refinement and purity, but now, mixed with the oils from your scalp and the various environmental contaminants it has collected. This powder tells a different story. It speaks of the week's accumulation of human existence, the gradual compromise of artificial perfection by the persistent realities of having a body that breathes, spires, and exists in the physical world. Your hair, emerging from its weekly coating of powder and pomade, reveals the true cost of your arrow's approach to cleanliness. The strands feel heavy with accumulated products, stiff with the residue of oils and starches that have built up despite your daily maintenance. The natural color of your hair appears muted and dull, as if the life has been gradually extracted by the constant application of artificial substances designed to transform its appearance. The removal of your clothing presents its own revelations about the nature of 18th century cleanliness. Your outer garments, the silks and woolens that present your public face to the world, are carefully set aside for their own cleaning processes. These fabrics cannot be simply washed with soap and water, as such treatment would destroy their delicate weaves and expensive dyes. Instead, they require specialized cleaning techniques involving brushing, airing, and the application of various powders and spirits designed to remove stains and odors, without subjecting the fabric to the perceived violence of full immersion in water. But it is the removal of your undergarments that reveals the most intimate truths about your weekly existence. The linen shirt that has served as the foundation of your cleanliness philosophy shows the evidence of a week's worth of human habitation. The fabric nearest your skin has absorbed the oils, perspiration, and various emanations of your body, creating patterns of discoloration and accumulation that map the geography of your physical existence. Examine these garments in the gentle light of your chamber and observe how they tell the story of your week. The areas where the fabric has been in closest contact with your skin show the most dramatic evidence of use. The collar and cuffs, the underarms and chest. The areas where your clothing has rubbed against your body during movement and daily activities, all bear witness to the ongoing processes of human life that your elaborate daily routine has worked so diligently to conceal. The fabric itself has absorbed not only the products of your body's natural functions, but also the various powders, perfumes, and other substances you have applied throughout the week. The result is a complex mixture of human and artificial elements that creates its own unique aromatic signature. This is not unpleasant in the way we might expect, but rather represents a kind of personal perfume that speaks to the intimate relationship between body and clothing in an era when the two existed in such close and constant contact. Now comes the most psychologically complex aspect of your weekly cleansing routine: the decision of how much of your actual body will be exposed to water. The medical wisdom of your era warns against the dangers of opening the pores through contact with water, particularly hot water, which is believed to invite disease and moral corruption into the body through these newly opened channels. Yet, the accumulation of a week's worth of human existence beneath your artificial coating demands some form of address. The compromise solution involves what your era terms dry cleaning of the body, a process that uses minimal amounts of water applied with cloths to specific areas deemed safe for such treatment. Begin with your hands and face, areas that have been most exposed to the outside world and therefore most in need of genuine cleansing. The water, barely warm to avoid the feared opening of pores, touches your skin with a sensation that might feel almost shocking after a week of existing beneath layers of powder and artificial protection. As the cloth moves across your face, removing the accumulated residue of daily powder applications, your natural skin emerges like a landscape appearing from beneath melting snow. The contrast between your artificial weekly appearance and your actual flesh becomes starkly apparent. Your real skin appears paler than you might expect, having been protected from any contact with natural light or air. The texture feels soft, but somehow vulnerable, unaccustomed to direct contact with the atmosphere after its week-long encasement in powder and oils. The washing of your hands reveals similar contrasts between artificial and natural states. The areas where rings and other jewelry have protected your skin from powder accumulation show as distinct bands of different coloration. Your fingernails, emerging from their weekly coating of applied substances, appear almost transparent in their cleanliness, yet somehow fragile and exposed without their customary protective layers. The cleansing of other parts of your body requires even more careful consideration and planning. The areas hidden beneath clothing throughout the week present their own challenges and concerns. The medical wisdom of your time suggests that excessive washing of these more private areas of the body could upset the natural balances and humors that maintain health and moral purity. Yet the practical realities of human existence demand some attention to these regions. The solution involves a kind of strategic cleaning that addresses the most pressing concerns while avoiding the perceived dangers of excessive exposure to water. Using cloths dampened with wine or spirits, substances believed to have purifying properties without the dangerous effects of plain water, you begin the delicate process of addressing the areas of your body that have accumulated the most evidence of the week's human activities. This process requires both physical and psychological courage, as you must overcome the deeply ingrained fears about water contact while simultaneously addressing the intimate realities of bodily existence. The wine or spirits create a cooling sensation against your skin that differs markedly from the feeling of water, carrying its own aromatic signature that mingles with the accumulated scents of your weekly existence. The cleansing of your feet presents particular challenges, as these extremities have borne the full weight of your weekly activities while encased in leather, shoes or boots that allow little ventilation. The removal of your stockings reveals feet that appear almost ghostly pale from their week-long confinement, yet bearing the distinctive marks and impressions left by your footwear. The accumulated moisture and various substances within your shoes have created an environment that speaks to the true costs of maintaining artificial cleanliness while still requiring the use of your physical body for daily activities. As you continue this weekly cleansing process, you begin to understand the profound psychological complexity of your era's relationship with the human body. There exists a deep ambivalence about physicality itself, simultaneous recognition of bodily needs and functions, combined with a powerful desire to transcend or disguise these natural processes. Your weekly cleaning routine represents an attempt to acknowledge reality while minimizing exposure to the perceived dangers of too much contact with your own flesh. Transport yourself now from the intimate chambers of ordinary households to the magnificent halls of Versailles, where the art of artificial cleanliness reaches its most elaborate and contradictory expression. Here, in the palace that represents the pinnacle of European civilization and refinement, you will discover how the pursuit of perfection created a world where luxury and squalor existed in the most peculiar and intimate harmony. Step carefully across the threshold into this realm where Marie Antoinette and her court transformed the simple act of maintaining one's person into a complex theatrical performance that consumed vast resources while achieving results that would horrify our contemporary sensibilities. The approach to Versailles itself prepares you for the contradictions you will encounter within its walls. The magnificent facade rises before you like a temple to human ambition. That's the countless windows reflecting the sunlight in patterns that suggest infinite wealth and power. The gardens stretch beyond the horizon in perfect geometric arrangements that speak to humanity's desire to impose order upon the natural world. Yet, even from a distance, you begin to detect the aromatic complexity that surrounds this palace of dreams. The air carries hints of what lies beneath the surface beauty, subtle suggestions that all is not as pristine as the architecture would suggest. As you draw closer to the palace entrance, the sensory evidence of Versailles' hidden realities becomes more apparent. The carefully maintained gravel paths show signs of the constant traffic of thousands of courtiers, servants, and visitors who daily traverse these routes. Despite the armies of groundskeepers who work to maintain the palace's appearance, you can observe the inevitable accumulation of human presence in a space designed to house what amounts to a small city within its walls. The main entrance to the palace presents itself as a study in contradictions that will define your entire experience. Within these walls, doorways are magnificent, framed by marble and decorated with gold leaf that catches and reflects light like captured sunlight. Yet, the threshold itself bears the unmistakable evidence of heavy use, stone worn smooth by countless feet in subtle staining that speaks to the practical realities of moving thousands of people through these spaces daily. Step across this threshold and immediately you are enveloped in the atmospheric complexity that defines life at Versailles. The air inside the palace carries its own unique signature, a mixture of competing perfumes, burning candles, with smoke from countless fireplaces, and underlying notes that speak to the challenge of maintaining sanitation in a space that houses far more people than it was ever designed to accommodate comfortably. The entrance hall itself demonstrates the peculiar approach to cleanliness that characterizes the entire palace. The marble floors gleam with a polish that reflects the elaborate costumes of the courtiers who move across them like gorgeously dressed chess pieces. Yet, closer examination reveals the practical challenges of maintaining such surfaces when hundreds of people traverse them daily wearing shoes that carry the evidence of their travels through gardens, courtyards, and various outdoor spaces where the realities of 18th century urban life cannot be entirely escaped. Observe the courtiers themselves as they navigate these magnificent spaces and begin to understand how the artificial cleanliness you experienced in your modest household becomes transformed into something far more elaborate and theatrical. when unlimited resources are applied to its pursuit. These are not simply people who have applied powder and perfume to their persons, but rather living artworks who have been constructed through the efforts of teams of specialized servants working for hours each day to achieve levels of artificial perfection that border on the surreal. The women of the court present themselves as creatures who seem to exist in a realm entirely separate from the natural world. Their faces appear as pale and perfect as marble sculptures, painted with cosmetics that create flawless complexions, bearing no resemblance to human skin. Their hair has been transformed into architectural marvels that rise from their scalps, like elaborate buildings, decorated with ribbons, jewels, sparks, and sometimes entire miniature scenes, complete with ships, gardens, or pastoral tableaux. Consider the extraordinary effort required to create and maintain these living artworks. Each morning, armies of servants begin work before dawn to prepare their mistresses for the day's social performances. Hair must be arranged, rearranged, and decorated with the precision of master craftsmen. Faces must be painted with the skill of portrait artists. Bodies must be laced, padded, and draped with fabrics that cost more than most families earn in entire years. The men of the court present their own version of this theatrical transformation, their faces as powdered and painted as those of their female counterparts, their wigs as elaborate and carefully constructed, their clothing as rich and precisely arranged. The result is a gathering of beings who appear to exist in a realm of pure artifice, where the natural human body has been so completely disguised and transformed that it becomes almost impossible to imagine the flesh and blood creatures that must exist somewhere beneath these elaborate constructions. Marie Antoinette herself represents the ultimate expression of this philosophy of artificial perfection. When you observe her moving through the halls of Versailles, you witness not simply a person who has been dressed and prepared for social interaction, but rather a living symbol of the belief that human refinement can transcend the limitations of natural existence. Her appearance has been crafted by teams of specialists working with unlimited resources to create an effect that speaks to divine appointment rather than earthly existence. Her face, painted with the finest cosmetics available in Europe, appears as smooth and perfect as porcelain. The white powder that covers her skin creates an almost luminous effect in the candlelight that illuminates the palace's interiors. Her lips have been painted in shades of red that seem to glow against the alabaster perfection of her complexion. Her eyebrows have been plucked and redrawn to create perfect arches that frame eyes lined and shadowed to appear larger and more dramatic than nature provided. But it is her hair that represents the true masterpiece of 18th century artificial construction, rising from her scalp in elaborate towers and curves, decorated with ribbons, jewels, flowers, decay, and sometimes entire miniature sculptures. Her coiffure represents hours of daily labor by skilled artisans who treat her head as their canvas. The construction must be engineered to withstand the movements of daily court life, while maintaining its elaborate architecture, requiring the use of pomades, powders, and various structural supports that transform her natural hair into something resembling a work of decorative art more than a part of the human body. The perfumes that emanate from Marie Antoinette and her court create their own atmospheric environment within the palace. These are not the simple scents of flowers or herbs, but complex compositions created by master perfumers using ingredients imported from around the world. Musk from distant continents mingles with rosewater from Persian gardens. Bergamot from Italian hillsides combines with ambergris harvested from whales in far-off oceans. The result is an aromatic complexity that announces the presence of royalty, while simultaneously serving the practical purpose of masking the less pleasant odors that inevitably accumulate when thousands of people live in close quarters with limited sanitation facilities. Yet, even as you marvel at the incredible luxury and artificial perfection of the court's appearance, you begin to detect the contradictions that lie at the heart of this elaborate performance. The magnificent clothing that drapes these living artworks tells a story of its own when examined more closely. The fabrics, while rich and expensive, bear subtle signs of the challenges involved in maintaining such elaborate costumes in an era when cleaning techniques remain primitive and water contact is still viewed with suspicion. The silks and satins that create such stunning visual effects are particularly vulnerable to the realities of human habitation. Perspiration, despite the best efforts to control it through powder and other artificial means, inevitably affects these delicate fabrics. Food and drink, consumed carefully but inevitably during the endless series of social gatherings that define court life, leave their subtle traces on clothing that cannot be easily cleaned without risking damage to expensive materials and elaborate decorations. The court's approach to these practical challenges reveals the fundamental contradictions in their philosophy of cleanliness. Rather than address the root causes of soiling and odor, the palace inhabitants simply apply more elaborate disguises and coverings, more perfume, more powder, more layers of artificial protection against the persistent realities of human existence. The result is a kind of aromatic arms race where competing scents battle for dominance in an atmosphere that grows increasingly complex and overwhelming. Beneath the glittering surface of Versailles' perfumed perfection lies a complex web of medical beliefs, engineering challenges, and practical necessities that reveals the true cost of maintaining artificial cleanliness on such an unprecedented scale. As you venture deeper into the hidden workings of palace life, you begin to understand how the court's pursuit of ethereal purity created problems that required increasingly elaborate and often contradictory solutions. The very attempt to transcend human nature through artificial means generated new forms of uncleanliness that the palace's inhabitants could neither acknowledge nor effectively address. The medical philosophy that governs hygiene practices at Versailles represents a fascinating intersection of ancient beliefs, contemporary ignorance, and aristocratic prejudice that creates a system of health maintenance both elaborate and fundamentally flawed. The court physicians, educated at the finest European universities and versed in classical texts dating back to ancient Greece and Rome, approached the human body as a complex mechanism governed by the balance of four fundamental humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. According to this medical understanding, it shapes every aspect of palace hygiene practices. The maintenance of health depends not on cleanliness as we understand it, but on the careful regulation of these internal fluids and their corresponding qualities of heat, cold, moisture, and dryness. The elaborate external preparations that transform courtiers into living artworks serve not merely aesthetic purposes, but represent attempts to influence these internal balances through the application of substances believed to possess specific humoral properties. Consider how this medical framework shapes the daily hygiene routines of Marie Antoinette herself. Her morning transformation begins not with washing, but with a complex consultation involving court physicians, astrologers, and various specialists who must determine the optimal balance of treatments based on the current state of her humors, the season of the year, the phases of the moon, and various other factors believed to influence human health and beauty. The powders applied to her face and body are not chosen solely for their visual effects, but for their supposed humoral properties. Rice powder is believed to possess cooling and drying qualities that can counteract excessive heat and moisture in the blood. Orris root powder carries its own set of medicinal associations, thought to promote the proper circulation of humors while providing protection against the entrance of corrupted air through the pores of the skin. The perfumes that surround Marie Antoinette represent an even more complex intersection of medical theory and practical necessity. Each scent component has been selected not only for its pleasant aroma, but for its believed effects on the body's internal balance. Rose water is thought to cool excessive heat in the blood while promoting proper circulation of the vital spirits. Musk, derived from animal sources, is believed to strengthen the heart and stimulate the proper flow of natural heat throughout the body. Bergamot and other citrus oils are prescribed for their supposed ability to clarify the blood and promote mental acuity. The physicians who oversee these elaborate preparations approach their work with the seriousness of men conducting complex scientific experiments. They maintain detailed records of which combinations of powders, perfumes, and other treatments produce the most beneficial effects on their royal patients' health and appearance. They adjust their prescriptions based on careful observation of Marie Antoinette's complexion, energy levels, appetite, and various other indicators they believe reflect the state of her internal humoral balance. Yet, despite their scholarly training and elaborate theoretical frameworks, these medical practitioners operate from a foundation of ignorance that would be comical if its consequences were not so serious. Their understanding of basic anatomy remains deeply flawed, their knowledge of disease transmission practically non-existent, and their treatments often more harmful than beneficial. The very practices they prescribe in the name of health frequently create conditions that promote actual illness and discomfort. The prohibition against bathing, which these physicians enforce with religious fervor, stems from their belief that hot water opens the pores of the skin and allows dangerous vapors to enter the body. They have observed that people who bathe frequently seem to fall ill more often than those who avoid water contact. And while we now understand this correlation resulted from contaminated water sources rather than the act of bathing itself, their conclusion seemed entirely logical within their theoretical framework. This medical prohibition against water contact creates increasingly complex problems as the artificial cleanliness systems of Versailles generate their own forms of accumulation and contamination to powders, perfumes, and various treatments applied daily to courtiers. Bodies and clothing interact with human perspiration and environmental factors to create substances that bear little resemblance to their original components. These accumulated mixtures become breeding grounds for bacteria and other microorganisms that the court's medical understanding cannot even conceive of, much less address effectively. The elaborate wigs that crown the heads of courtiers present particularly challenging medical and practical problems. These artificial hair structures, some standing several feet high and weighing many pounds, create warm, moist environments beneath their carefully constructed exteriors. The pomades and powders used to maintain their elaborate architecture, combined with the natural oils and perspiration from the scalp, create conditions ideal for the proliferation of various parasites and microorganisms. Lice become constant companions of even the most elevated members of the court, their presence accepted as an inevitable consequence of fashionable hair arrangements. The courtiers develop elaborate techniques for managing these unwelcome guests without disrupting their carefully constructed appearances. Delicate ivory combs designed specifically for lice removal become standard components of every courtier's toilette kit, while servants skilled in the discreet extraction of parasites from elaborate hairstyles command premium wages for their specialized expertise. The court physicians, faced with this persistent problem, prescribe various treatments that reveal both their medical ignorance and their commitment to avoiding water-based solutions. Mercury compounds, believed to possess purifying properties, are applied to the scalp despite their toxic effects. Various herbal preparations are worked into the hair and scalp, often causing irritation and allergic reactions that would create additional problems requiring further treatment. The clothing of courtiers presents similar challenges that multiply as the palace's inhabitants pursue ever more elaborate forms of artificial cleanliness. The silk and satin fabrics that create such stunning visual effects prove particularly vulnerable to the accumulated effects of perfumes, powders, and human secretions. These materials cannot be cleaned using the harsh soaps and hot water employed for ordinary garments. As such, treatment would destroy their delicate weaves and expensive dyes. Instead, the palace develops specialized cleaning techniques that reflect The same medical prejudices governing personal hygiene. Fabrics are treated with various spirits and vinegars believed to possess purifying properties without the dangerous effects of water immersion. Brushing and airing become primary methods for maintaining clothing, while various powders and perfumes are applied to mask odors and refresh appearances without addressing their underlying causes. The cumulative effect of these cleaning practices creates garments that appear magnificent from a distance but tell a different story upon closer examination. The fabrics gradually absorb the accumulated residues of their various treatments, creating complex chemical mixtures that alter their texture, appearance, and aromatic properties. Colors fade in irregular patterns. Materials become stiff with accumulated substances. Cumulate stains develop that resist all attempts at removal. Marie Antoinette's wardrobe represents the ultimate expression of these challenges, as her clothing receives the most elaborate and frequent treatments available to 18th century textile care. Her gowns, some costing more than entire estates, receive daily attention from teams of specialists who brush air, perfume, and powder them in attempts to maintain their pristine appearance. Yet, even these expensive garments show the inevitable effects of their constant exposure to the complex chemical environment created by the palace's approach to cleanliness. The undergarments worn by courtiers present even more intimate challenges to the palace's hygiene systems. These linen and cotton garments, which serve as the foundation for the court's cleanliness philosophy, must be changed and cleaned regularly to maintain their effectiveness as barriers between the body and outer clothing. Yet the washing of these items requires techniques that reflect the medical prejudices of the era while addressing the practical realities of human habitation. As you spend more time within the walls of Versailles, moving beyond the immediate dazzle of its surface magnificence, a more complex and disturbing picture begins to emerge of what life truly meant within this supposed paradise of refined living. The longer you remain in these perfumed halls, the more your senses adapt to the artificial atmosphere, and gradually you begin to detect the underlying realities that the court's elaborate systems of disguise, decay, and concealment work so desperately to hide. This is the story of how the ultimate expression of artificial cleanliness became, paradoxically, one of the most unsanitary environments in European history. The adaptation of your senses to the palace's aromatic complexity represents a phenomenon that every inhabitant of Versailles must undergo, yet one that reveals the profound disconnection between appearance and reality that defines palace life. During your first hours within these walls, the overwhelming mixture of perfumes, powders, decay, and various artificial scents creates an almost intoxicating effect that masks the subtler notes beneath. But as days pass and your olfactory sensitivity adjusts to this artificial baseline, you begin to detect the persistent underlying odors that no amount of perfume can completely eliminate. These underlying scents tell the true story of what happens when thousands of people attempt to live together while pursuing a philosophy of cleanliness that actively avoids the most basic principles of sanitation. Beneath the rose water and lavender, the musk and bergamot, lurk the honest odors of human habitation on a scale that overwhelms every attempt at artificial purification. The very ambition of creating a palace that houses what amounts to a substantial town while maintaining the appearance of ethereal perfection ensures that Versailles becomes a kind of magnificent trap where the pot accumulated effects of human existence have nowhere to go. Marie Antoinette herself, despite being surrounded by the most elaborate and expensive hygiene systems available to 18th century technology, becomes a living example of the fundamental impossibility of achieving true cleanliness through purely artificial means. Observe her more closely now, with eyes adjusted to the palace's particular reality, and you begin to detect the subtle signs that reveal the human being beneath the carefully constructed artwork. The powder that creates her porcelain complexion shows signs of the days were by afternoon, developing small cracks and discolorations where perspiration has interacted with the rice starch and various additives. The elaborate architecture of her hair, despite the constant attention of skilled servants, gradually accumulates particles from the palace's dusty atmosphere, creating a subtle graying effect that speaks to the impossibility of maintaining pristine whiteness in an environment where thousands of people generate constant clouds of powder, dust, and various airborne particles. Her clothing, magnificent as it appears from a respectful distance, tells a more complex story when observed with the kind of attention that extended proximity makes possible. The fabrics that seemed so perfect in the formal lighting of state occasions show different characteristics in the varied illumination of daily palace life. Subtle stains appear where food and drink have made contact despite the most careful dining techniques. Discoloration marks the areas where perfumes and cosmetics have transferred from her body to the expensive materials, where patterns emerge, where the constant friction of court life has gradually abraded even the finest silks and satins. Most tellingly, the aromatic signature that surrounds Marie Antoinette reveals itself to be a complex mixture of artificial and natural elements. That speaks to the ongoing battle between human nature and aristocratic aspiration. The expensive perfumes that announce her presence carry with them subtler notes that reflect the accumulated effects of maintaining such an elaborate artificial construction day after day, week after week, year after year. The other members of the court present similar evidence of the fundamental flaws in their approach to cleanliness, though their lower status often makes these signs more apparent to careful observation. The lesser nobles, while still magnificently dressed and carefully powdered, show clearer evidence of the compromises required to maintain artificial perfection with slightly less elaborate resources. Their wigs may be less perfectly maintained, their powders less evenly applied, their perfumes less successful at masking the underlying realities of human existence. The servants who attend these elaborate courtiers face their own unique challenges in maintaining cleanliness standards that seem to exist in direct opposition to the practical requirements of their work. They must handle the clothing, hair, personal effects of their masters while somehow avoiding contamination that might compromise their own ability to maintain acceptable appearances. They develop techniques for working with materials and substances that would overwhelm anyone not accustomed to the palace's particular aromatic environment. Venture into the private chambers of the palace, spaces hidden from public view where the performance of perfect cleanliness might be expected. To relax slightly, you discover that the pursuit of artificial purity has become so ingrained that it continues even in the most intimate spaces. Marie Antoinette's private apartments represent the ultimate expression of the palace's approach to personal hygiene, with every surface, every fabric, every object carefully maintained according to the elaborate protocols that govern court life. Yet, even here, in spaces designed for privacy and relaxation, the fundamental contradictions of the palace's hygiene philosophy manifest themselves in ways that would shock contemporary sensibilities. The chamber pots, those necessary concessions to human biology that cannot be eliminated, no matter how ethereal one's aspirations, represent engineering challenges that revealed the palace's struggle to address basic sanitary needs while maintaining the illusion of transcendent purity. These essential items are crafted from the finest materials available: porcelain painted with delicate flowers, silver decorated with elaborate engravings, even gold for the most elevated members of the court. Yet their function requires them to confront the realities of human waste that the palace's entire philosophy of cleanliness is designed to deny or disguise. The result is a kind of cognitive dissonance where the most necessary human functions must be addressed using implements so beautiful they seem to mock the purposes they serve. The emptying and cleaning of these chamber pots requires specialized servants who must somehow perform these necessary tasks while maintaining the sanitary standards expected within the palace. These workers developed their own understanding of cleanliness that necessarily differs from the artificial purity pursued by their masters, as their duties required them to confront directly the biological realities that the court's medical philosophy refuses to acknowledge. The disposal of waste from these personal sanitary implements presents logistical challenges that reveal the inadequacy of the palace's infrastructure for handling the biological outputs of its thousands of inhabitants. The elaborate systems designed to make waste invisible cannot keep pace with the production generated by so many people living in such concentrated proximity. The result is an accumulation of sanitary problems that compound over time, creating conditions that no amount of perfume can completely mask. The laundry operations required to maintain the palace's elaborate clothing and linens represent another area where the artificial cleanliness philosophy confronts practical realities that resist artificial solutions. The washing of chamber pot linens, bed sheets, and various personal items that have come into contact with human waste requires techniques that necessarily violate the medical prohibitions against water, contact, and soap usage that govern the personal hygiene of the court. The women who perform this essential work exist in a parallel universe of cleanliness understanding, using hot water, strong soaps, and vigorous scrubbing techniques that achieve actual sanitation rather than artificial purity. Their knowledge and skills represent a practical understanding of hygiene that far exceeds the theoretical frameworks employed by court physicians. Yet their lower social status ensures that their superior understanding remains hidden from those who most need to learn from their example. The contrast between the ethereal perfection maintained in the staterooms and the honest functionality required in the laundry chambers creates kind of schizophrenia within the palace's approach to cleanliness. The same building houses both the ultimate expression of artificial purity and the most practical understanding of actual sanitation. Yet the two systems remain completely isolated from each other by the social hierarchies that define palace life. The accumulation of waste, heat, and moisture from these hidden cleaning operations creates atmospheric conditions within the palace that affect even the most carefully controlled environments of the staterooms. The humidity generated by vast laundry operations seeps through walls and floors, carrying with it aromatic evidence of the practical work being performed in hidden spaces. This moisture interacts with the powders, perfumes, and various artificial treatments used throughout the palace, creating chemical reactions that produce new odors and substances that further complicate the aromatic environment. The preservation of food for the palace's thousands of inhabitants presents similar challenges that reveal the inadequacy of 18th century food safety understanding when applied on such a massive scale. The kitchens must prepare and store vast quantities of perishable ingredients in an era before refrigeration, using preservation techniques that rely on salt, smoke, and various spices that add their own aromatic complexity to the palace's atmosphere. The spoilage that inevitably occurs when dealing with such quantities of perishable food creates waste disposal problems that multiply the sanitary challenges already facing the palace's infrastructure. Rotting vegetables, spoiled meat, and various other food wastes must be removed from the palace in ways that maintain the illusion of ethereal perfection while addressing the practical realities of large-scale food preparation. The rats and other vermin that such food storage inevitably attracts represent another layer of sanitary challenge that the palace's artificial cleanliness philosophy cannot address effectively. These creatures, drawn by the abundant food sources and comfortable living conditions within the palace walls, create their own forms of contamination that no amount of perfume can disguise. Their presence becomes so accepted that courtiers develop elaborate protocols for ignoring evidence of rodent habitation that would horrify visitors from less magnificent but more sanitary environments. The seasonal variations in temperature and humidity that affect all buildings of the era create particular challenges for a structure designed to maintain such elaborate artificial environments. During the hot summer months, the accumulated effects of thousands of people wearing multiple layers of heavy clothing, elaborate wigs, and various artificial treatments create atmospheric conditions that overwhelm even the most sophisticated perfuming systems available to 18th century technology. Leave behind now the perfumed artifice of Versailles and descend with me into the hidden archaeological layers of Paris, where centuries of human waste and urban detritus have created a subterranean museum of 18th century life that tells stories far more honest than any court chronicle. Here, beneath the cobblestones and foundations of what was once the most magnificent city in Europe, lie the accumulated remains of daily existence as it was actually lived, not as it was performed for public display. The archaeological record speaks with a truthfulness that powder and perfume could never obscure, revealing the intimate realities of how an entire civilization managed the most basic and unavoidable consequences of human existence. The modern excavations that have revealed these buried truths began as routine construction projects, attempts to install contemporary infrastructure beneath streets that have witnessed centuries of human passage. But as the diggers descended through layers of compacted earth and forgotten time, they uncovered not just the expected debris of urban development, but rather a carefully preserved archive of human waste management that stretches back through generations of Parisians who faced the daily challenge of disposing of their bodily outputs while maintaining some pretense of civilized living. Picture yourself standing at the edge of one of these archaeological excavations, perhaps in the shadow of Notre Dame or within sight of the old Louvre, watching as careful workers with brushes and small tools expose layer after layer of compressed human history. The earth itself tells its story through distinct strata that mark different eras of the city's development, each one preserving the evidence of how its inhabitants approached the fundamental problem of waste disposal that no amount of social refinement could eliminate. The uppermost layers, dating from the more recent past, show evidence of 19th and early 20th century approaches to urban sanitation that represent dramatic improvements over earlier methods. Fragments of glazed ceramic pipes speak to the development of organized sewage systems, while the remains of improved chamber pots and early water closets suggest a gradual adoption of more sophisticated waste management technologies. But as the excavation descends deeper into the 18th century layers that concern our exploration, a very different picture emerges of how the generation that pursued such elaborate artificial cleanliness actually managed the practical realities of human waste. Here, preserved in the anaerobic conditions that prevent complete decomposition, lie the actual artifacts of daily waste management that reveal the startling gap between surface appearance and underground reality. The chamber pots themselves, recovered in remarkable states of preservation, represent a fascinating intersection of practical necessity and social aspiration that perfectly embodies the contradictions of 18th century hygiene philosophy. These vessels, ranging from crude earthenware used by the poor to elaborate porcelain and silver examples owned by the wealthy, served as the primary interface between human biology and social acceptability in an era when public waste disposal systems remained primitive or non-existent. Examine closely one of these recovered chamber pots, perhaps one that once served a middle-class Parisian household during the height of the city's cultural flowering. The vessel itself appears almost comically inadequate for the task it was designed to perform. A delicate porcelain bowl decorated with pastoral scenes or floral motifs that seem to mock the reality of its intended function. The disconnect between the aesthetic refinement of the object and the brutal practicality of its purpose encapsulates the entire 18th century approach to managing the unmentionable aspects of human existence. The chemical analysis of residues found within these recovered vessels provides unprecedented insight into the actual health and diet of 18th century Parisians, revealing information that no contemporary account would have recorded for posterity. The mineral content, the presence of various parasites and their eggs, the evidence of diseases and dietary deficiencies, all preserved in the very waste that their producers worked so desperately to hide from public view. These scientific analyses reveal a population struggling with endemic health problems that their elaborate hygiene rituals could neither prevent nor cure. Intestinal parasites appear to have been virtually universal, affecting rich and poor alike, despite the wealthy's elaborate attempts to protect themselves through artificial cleanliness. The evidence suggests that the powders and perfumes that created such magnificent appearances did nothing to address the underlying health challenges that resulted from inadequate sanitation and waste management. The preservation conditions that have maintained these archaeological deposits also reveal the sophisticated understanding that 18th century Parisians developed regarding the chemical processes of waste decomposition, the locations chosen for waste disposal, the materials used to line waste pits, decay, and the various additives employed to control odors and decomposition rates all demonstrate practical knowledge that far exceeded the theoretical understanding promoted by contemporary medical authorities. Consider the elaborate systems developed by ordinary Parisians for managing household waste disposal in the absence of organized municipal services. Each household became a small engineering project, with carefully designed waste storage areas, drainage systems to channel liquid effluent, and ventilation arrangements to minimize the aromatic impact on living spaces. These systems represent the accumulated wisdom of generations of urban dwellers who face the daily challenge of disposing of human waste while maintaining livable conditions within crowded city environments. The social geography of waste disposal, revealed by archaeological evidence, demonstrates how the management of human waste created and reinforced class distinctions within Parisian society. The wealthy could afford elaborate chamber pots, private waste disposal systems, and sufficient servants to manage the unpleasant aspects of waste removal. The poor, crowded into tenements and boarding houses, developed communal waste management systems that created shared responsibility for problems that individual households could not address alone. The archaeological layers revealed distinct patterns of waste disposal that marked different social and economic levels within the same neighborhoods. The deposits associated with wealthy households show evidence of more elaborate chamber pots, more frequent emptying and cleaning, and more sophisticated waste processing systems. The areas associated with poor housing show evidence of simpler vessels, less frequent maintenance, and more direct disposal methods that created sanitary challenges for entire communities. Venture deeper now into the subterranean landscape that lies beneath the elegant facades of 18th century Paris, where the accumulated evidence of centuries of waste management reveals a hidden geography of human necessity that operated according to entirely different rules than the refined society that existed above ground. Here, in the carefully mapped layers of archaeological deposits, we can trace the actual infrastructure of daily life as it was lived by ordinary Parisians, who faced the unchanging biological realities of human existence while their social superiors pursued increasingly elaborate fantasies of artificial purity. The systematic mapping of waste disposal sites across different neighborhoods of Paris reveals a complex urban landscape where the management of human waste created its own geography of social relationships, economic opportunities, and environmental challenges. Each district developed its own characteristic patterns of waste management that reflected the social composition of its inhabitants. The available space for waste storage and the proximity to disposal areas outside the city walls. Consider the elaborate network of interconnected waste storage chambers that archaeologists have discovered beneath the fashionable Marais district, where wealthy merchants and minor nobility maintained elegant townhouses above ground, while unknowingly living atop a vast underground infrastructure of human waste management. These subterranean chambers, carved from the limestone bedrock that underlies much of Paris, represent engineering achievements that rival the more celebrated architectural accomplishments visible above ground. The construction of these underground waste storage facilities required sophisticated understanding of geology, hydrology, decay, and structural engineering that contradicts the assumption that 18th century Parisians lacked practical knowledge about sanitation. The chambers were carefully designed to prevent groundwater contamination while providing adequate storage capacity for the waste production of entire neighborhoods. The walls were lined with specially prepared clays and mortar designed to resist the corrosive effects of decomposing waste, while drainage systems channeled excess liquids away from foundation areas to prevent structural damage to buildings above. The social organization required to construct and maintain these underground systems reveals a level of community cooperation that transcended the individual property boundaries that defined surface relationships. Wealthy homeowners who might never speak to each other in public were forced to collaborate in the management of shared waste disposal systems that served entire blocks of housing. Archaeological evidence suggests that these underground cooperatives often functioned more effectively than many contemporary public institutions, achieving remarkable feats of engineering and maintenance. Through purely voluntary associations, the specialized labor force that developed to maintain these underground waste management systems represents a hidden economy that operated parallel to the visible commercial life of the city. The workers who entered these subterranean chambers to remove accumulated waste, perform maintenance on storage facilities, and manage the complex logistics of urban waste disposal, developed skills and knowledge that were essential to the city's functioning, yet remained completely invisible to the elegant society that depended on their services. These waste management workers, known in contemporary records by various euphemistic titles that disguise the true nature of their work, commanded substantial wages that reflected both the unpleasant nature of their duties and the critical importance of their services to urban life. The archaeological evidence suggests that some of these workers accumulated sufficient wealth to establish their own households in respectable neighborhoods, creating the peculiar situation where people whose daily work involved the most intimate contact with human waste lived as neighbors to those who pursued the most elaborate forms of artificial cleanliness. The tools and equipment used by these underground workers, preserved in the archaeological deposits where they were lost or abandoned, reveal sophisticated understanding of waste management technology that exceeded anything taught in contemporary medical or engineering schools. Specialized shovels designed for working in confined spaces, ventilation devices that provided breathable air in toxic environments, protective clothing that shielded workers from direct contact with corrosive waste, and various mechanical devices that assisted in the movement and processing of large quantities of human waste off, demonstrate practical knowledge that was far advanced beyond theoretical understanding. The seasonal rhythms that governed underground waste management created their own calendar of urban activity that operated independently of the social seasons that defined polite society above ground. Spring waste removal operations, when accumulated winter deposits required intensive processing before warm weather accelerated decomposition, employed hundreds of workers in coordinated activities that transformed entire neighborhoods into industrial waste processing operations that somehow remained largely invisible to surface inhabitants. The archaeological evidence reveals that these spring cleaning operations required complex logistical coordination involving waste removal teams, transportation systems for moving processed waste to disposal areas outside the city, and temporary storage facilities that could accommodate the massive quantities of material generated by winter accumulation. The scale of these operations suggests that waste management represented one of the largest seasonal industries in 18th century Paris. yet one that operated almost entirely outside the awareness of contemporary chroniclers and social observers. The chemical analysis of preserved waste deposits provides unprecedented insight into the actual effectiveness of various waste treatment methods employed by 18th century Parisians. The extensive use of lime ash and various organic additives reveals sophisticated understanding of the chemical processes that govern waste, decomposition, and odor control. These treatments were often more effective than the methods promoted by contemporary medical authorities, suggesting that practical experience had advanced far beyond theoretical knowledge in this critical area of urban life. The preservation of organic materials within waste deposits has allowed modern researchers to reconstruct the actual diets of different social classes with remarkable precision. The waste deposits associated with wealthy households reveal dietary patterns that often contradict the elaborate culinary culture associated with 18th century French cuisine. Despite their access to exotic ingredients and elaborate cooking techniques, the wealthy often consumed diets that were nutritionally deficient, surprisingly limited in variety. The presence of numerous fruit seeds and vegetable remains in wealthy households. Waste deposits suggests that even the rich depended heavily on seasonal produce and preserved foods that provided limited nutritional variety throughout much of the year. The absence of many foods that we associate with historical French cuisine suggests that the elaborate culinary culture celebrated in contemporary accounts may have been more theatrical than nutritional, focused on presentation and social display rather than actual dietary quality. The waste deposits associated with middle-class households revealed dietary patterns that were often more nutritionally balanced than those of their wealthier neighbors, suggesting that moderate means sometimes produced better practical results than unlimited resources. These households appear to have consumed more diverse combinations of grains, vegetables, and proteins, perhaps because their limited budgets forced them to make more practical food choices, rather than pursuing the fashionable dietary restrictions that affected wealthy households. As our archaeological journey through the hidden foundations of 18th century Paris draws toward its conclusion, we must confront the broader implications of what these buried deposits reveal about the nature of human civilization itself. Accumulated evidence from centuries of waste disposal speaks to fundamental questions about how societies manage the tension between their highest aspirations and their most basic biological necessities. Here, in the silent testimony of buried truth, we find a more honest accounting of human existence than any contemporary chronicle could provide. The most profound revelation emerging from these archaeological investigations concerns the extraordinary disconnect between public presentation and private reality that characterize not just individual lives, but entire social systems. The elegant Paris that foreign visitors admired, with its magnificent architecture, sophisticated culture, and refined inhabitants, was literally built upon foundations of accumulated human waste that created underground conditions more befitting a primitive settlement than the supposed pinnacle of European civilization. Consider the psychological implications of this. Fundamental dishonesty about the basic conditions of urban life. The same individuals who spent hours each morning constructing elaborate facades of artificial cleanliness were returning each evening to homes built directly above vast accumulations of human excrement. It's the disconnect between their carefully maintained surface appearances and their actual living conditions created a kind of collective delusion that affected every aspect of social and cultural development. The archaeological evidence suggests that this disconnection from reality had profound effects on the development of 18th century French culture and politics. The elaborate intellectual and artistic achievements of the era took place within a context of fundamental dishonesty about basic living conditions that may have influenced the development of philosophical and political ideas that emphasized appearance over substance, theory over practical experience, and idealistic abstraction over concrete reality. The revolutionaries who would eventually overthrow the old regime may have been responding not just to political and economic inequalities, but to a deeper frustration with social systems that had become so divorced from practical reality that they could no longer address the basic needs of human existence. The archaeological evidence reveals living conditions that were unsustainable in the long term, creating health and environmental problems that would eventually demand radical solutions. The waste management systems revealed by archaeological investigation demonstrate remarkable ingenuity and practical knowledge that operated completely outside the official medical and scientific establishments of the era. The workers who designed and maintained these underground systems possessed understanding of chemistry, engineering, and public health that far exceeded anything taught in contemporary universities or medical schools. This parallel development of practical knowledge suggests that 18th century society was characterized, quote, by a fundamental split between theoretical understanding and practical experience that prevented the integration of knowledge necessary for solving basic social problems. The elaborate medical theories that governed official approaches to hygiene were not just wrong, but actively counterproductive. While the practical knowledge needed to address sanitation challenges remained confined to underground economies that operated outside respectable society, the economic systems that developed around waste management revealed sophisticated market mechanisms that operated according to entirely different principles than the official commercial culture of the era. The black market trades in human waste, recycled materials, and various byproducts of urban life created wealth and employment opportunities that supported substantial populations while remaining completely invisible to contemporary economic theorists and government officials. These underground economies developed their own systems of quality control, price regulation, and contract enforcement that often functioned more effectively than official commercial institutions. The archaeological evidence suggests that waste management entrepreneurs operated according to practical business principles that achieved remarkable efficiency, while the official economy struggled with theoretical approaches that often failed to address actual market needs. The preservation of personal items within waste deposits provides unprecedented insight into the actual material culture of 18th century Paris, revealing how ordinary people actually lived rather than how they wished to be perceived. The discarded objects tell stories of daily struggle, practical adaptation, and creative problem solving that contradict the elegant lifestyle portrayed in contemporary accounts. The remarkable durability of some discarded items suggests that 18th century craftsmen often produced goods of higher quality than their reputations would suggest, while the rapid deterioration of other objects reveals the effects of the era's challenging living conditions on even well-made materials. The archaeological record provides objective evidence of material quality that allows us to separate marketing claims from actual performance in ways that contemporary accounts could not. The evidence of repair and sporadic conferment modification found undiscarded objects reveals the extent to which ordinary Parisians extended the useful life of manufactured goods through ingenious adaptations and creative problem solving. Items that were originally designed for specific purposes were regularly modified to serve entirely different functions, suggesting a culture of practical innovation that operated independently of official technological development. The seasonal patterns of disposal revealed by archaeological investigation demonstrate how ordinary Parisians adapted their consumption and disposal practices to environmental conditions in ways that showed sophisticated understanding of resource management. The timing of major disposal activities, the seasonal variation in waste composition, and the coordination of disposal activities with agricultural cycles all suggest systematic approaches to waste management that achieved remarkable efficiency. Using available technology, the archaeological evidence also reveals the extent to which different neighborhoods developed distinct waste management cultures that reflected their social composition and available resources. Areas inhabited by craftsmen developed disposal practices that reflected their understanding of materials and production processes, while commercial districts created waste management systems that supported the needs of trade and manufacturing activities. The preservation of medical and pharmaceutical materials within waste deposits provides direct evidence of the actual health practices employed by ordinary Parisians, often revealing approaches that differed significantly from official medical recommendations. The presence of various herbal preparations, home remedies, and alternative treatments suggests that practical healthcare operated according to different principles than the theoretical medicine practiced by official physicians. The analysis of preserved organic materials reveals the actual effectiveness of various treatments and preparations, providing objective evidence of medical practices that contemporary accounts often describe only in theoretical terms. The archaeological record suggests that many traditional remedies achieved better practical results than the elaborate treatments prescribed by trained physicians. The evidence of industrial activity preserved within waste deposits reveals the extent to which manufacturing and processing activities were integrated into residential neighborhoods in ways that created both economic opportunities and environmental challenges. Small-scale manufacturing operations generated waste streams that mixed with domestic refuse to create complex disposal challenges that required innovative solutions. The archaeological investigation of these mixed waste streams reveals sophisticated understanding of material properties and waste processing techniques that allowed urban craftsmen to maximize the value extracted from raw materials while minimizing disposal costs. These practices often achieved remarkable efficiency in resource utilization that exceeded anything accomplished by larger-scale industrial operations. The preservation of evidence from black market activities within waste deposits reveals the extent to which illegal or semi-illegal economic activities were integrated into the daily life of ordinary Parisians. The disposal of materials associated with unlicensed manufacturing, prohibited trade goods, and various other underground economic activity suggests that regulatory violations were widespread and generally accepted within urban communities. Transport yourself now across the vast expanse of Europe and the Mediterranean, leaving behind the powder-dusted chambers of Versailles and the hidden archaeological layers of Paris, to enter a world where the relationship between humanity and cleanliness followed entirely different principles. In the heart of the Ottoman Empire, during the same 18th century when Europeans feared water as a dangerous threat to health and morality, an ancient and sophisticated civilization had developed a culture of bathing that elevated cleanliness from mere necessity to spiritual practice, from individual concern to communal celebration. Step across the threshold of an Ottoman hammam on a gentle morning in Istanbul, perhaps in the year 1750, and immediately you find yourself in an environment that challenges every assumption about 18th century hygiene that our European journey has established. The very air tells a different story here. Warm and humid, with the beneficial steam that Europeans viewed with such suspicion, carrying the clean scents of soap and heated marble, rather than the complex aromatic mixtures of powder and perfume that marked Western attempts at artificial cleanliness. The architecture itself speaks to a fundamentally different philosophy of human relationship with water and cleanliness, where European buildings worked to hide or minimize the infrastructure of human hygiene. The Ottoman bathhouse celebrates these functions through magnificent architectural achievement that transforms the simple act of washing into an experience of beauty, community, and spiritual renewal. Consider the soaring domed ceilings that rise above you, pierced with star-shaped openings that allow natural light to filter down in patterns that shift, and change as the sun moves across the sky above. These architectural features serve not merely aesthetic purposes, but represent sophisticated understanding of ventilation, humidity control, and lighting that creates optimal conditions for bathing activities while maintaining the atmospheric beauty that elevates simple washing into something approaching divine experience. The walls themselves, lined with marble that has been carefully selected and positioned to provide both beauty and practical functionality, demonstrate how Ottoman architects integrated aesthetic and hygienic considerations in ways that European builders seemed unable to achieve. The smooth surfaces facilitate easy cleaning, while the beautiful patterns and colors create visual environments that enhance rather than distract from the bathing experience. The water systems that supply the bathhouse represent engineering achievements that rival anything accomplished in contemporary Europe, yet serve purposes that European engineers seemed unable to comprehend. Multiple sources provide water at different temperatures, allowing bathers to experience the full range of thermal variation that Ottoman medical theory considered essential to proper health maintenance. Hot pools for deep relaxation, warm areas for washing and social interaction, and cool pools for invigorating conclusion all work together to create a comprehensive hydrotherapy system that addressed both physical and psychological aspects of human cleanliness. The social organization of the bathhouse reflects cultural values that place communal hygiene at the center of civilized life, rather than treating cleanliness as a private struggle against natural human characteristics. Here, the act of bathing becomes an opportunity for social interaction, community building, and mutual assistance that strengthens social bonds while achieving practical hygiene goals that European individualistic approaches seemed unable to accomplish. Observe the gentle interactions between bathers of different social classes, ages, and backgrounds as they share the common facilities and participate in the collective rituals of cleanliness. The bathhouse functions as a democratic space where social hierarchies are temporarily suspended in favor of the shared human need for cleanliness and the communal enjoyment of water, steam, and social interaction. Wealthy merchants relax beside skilled craftsmen. Elderly women share bathing areas with young mothers, and children learn proper hygiene practices through observation and participation rather than formal instruction. The attendants who work within the bathhouse possess specialized knowledge and skills that reflect centuries of accumulated understanding about the relationship between water, heat, steam, and human health. These professionals, respected members of their communities rather than hidden servants, provide services that range from simple washing assistance to complex therapeutic treatments that address both physical ailments and psychological stress. Watch as a skilled telic, a male bathhouse attendant, begins the elaborate process of preparing a bather for the full Ottoman cleansing experience. His movements reflect years of training and practice in techniques that maximize the beneficial effects of heat, steam, and water contact while ensuring the comfort and safety of his client. This is not the hurried, apologetic approach to bodily contact that characterizes European hygiene assistance, but rather a confident, professional application of knowledge that treats the human body as deserving of careful attention and skilled care. The initial phase of the bathing process involves gradual adaptation to the heat and humidity of the bathhouse environment. The bather rests on heated marble platforms that warm the body slowly and evenly, preparing the skin and muscles for the more intensive cleansing activities that will follow. This patient approach to temperature adjustment reflects medical understanding that sudden exposure to extreme temperature changes can be harmful, while gradual adaptation allows the body to gain maximum benefit from heat therapy. The steam that fills the air serves multiple functions that European medical theory seemed unable to grasp. Rather than opening dangerous pores that invite disease, as European physicians feared, the controlled humidity of the bathhouse softens the skin, facilitates the removal of accumulated dirt and dead skin cells, and provides respiratory benefits that improve overall health and comfort. The bathers breathe easily in this warm, moist environment, their skin glowing with healthy perspiration that represents natural body processes working properly rather than evidence of dangerous humoral imbalance. Settle deeper now into the warm embrace of the Ottoman bathhouse, allowing the gentle heat to penetrate your muscles while the therapeutic steam works its ancient magic on your skin and spirit. Here, in this sanctuary of water and warmth, you begin to understand how an entire civilization developed around principles that treated the human body not as an enemy to be disguised and contained, but as a temple deserving of careful attention, respectful maintenance, and regular celebration through the sacred rituals of cleanliness. The transition from the European world of artificial purity to this realm of genuine cleanliness represents more than a simple change in hygiene techniques. It reflects a fundamental shift in understanding human nature itself. Where European philosophy viewed the body as a source of shame and contamination that required constant disguise, Ottoman culture embraced physicality as a divine gift that achieved its highest expression through proper care, maintenance, and celebration. Begin to appreciate the sophisticated sensory environment that surrounds you within the bathhouse walls, where every element has been carefully designed to enhance the experience of cleanliness while providing genuine therapeutic benefits. The temperature gradients that guide you from cooler entrance areas through increasingly warm spaces to the central steam chamber represent knowledge of human physiology that allows your body to adapt gradually to beneficial heat while avoiding the shock that sudden temperature changes might produce. The acoustic environment of the bathhouse creates its own form of therapy, with the gentle sounds of flowing water, distant conversation, and the occasional splash of movement combining to produce an oral landscape that promotes relaxation and psychological restoration. The marble surfaces that line the walls and floors contribute to this acoustic design, reflecting and distributing sound waves and patterns that create privacy for quiet conversation while maintaining the overall atmosphere of peaceful community. Observe how the lighting within the bathhouse changes throughout the day as the sun moves across the star-shaped openings in the domed ceiling, creating shifting patterns of illumination that mark the passage of time without the harsh insistence of mechanical timekeeping. This natural chronometry encourages bathers to slow their pace and synchronize their activities with natural rhythms, rather than rushing through hygiene rituals as efficiently as possible. The social choreography that governs bathhouse interactions reflects centuries of cultural development that has created protocols for communal nakedness that maintain dignity and respect while facilitating the practical requirements of thorough cleansing. The careful balance between privacy and community, individual attention and group harmony, personal modesty, and necessary exposure for proper washing all demonstrate sophisticated understanding of human psychology and social dynamics. Watch as experienced bathers navigate these social complexities with grace and confidence that comes from lifelong participation in bathhouse culture. Their movements reflect unconscious mastery of the etiquette that governs shared cleanliness, allowing them to assist others, receive help when needed, and maintain personal dignity while participating fully in the communal aspects of the bathing experience that the age integration that characterizes bathhouse culture provides. Educational opportunities that transmit hygiene knowledge across generations through observation and participation rather than formal instruction. Children learn proper bathing techniques by watching their elders, gradually assuming greater responsibility for their own cleanliness while always remaining within a supportive community that ensures proper standards are maintained. The elderly receive particular respect and assistance within the bathhouse environment, reflecting cultural values that honor age and experience while ensuring that physical limitations do not prevent participation in essential hygiene activities. The gentle help provided to older bathers demonstrates community commitment to maintaining the health and dignity of all members, regardless of their individual capabilities. the therapeutic massage techniques that often accompany the bathing process represent sophisticated understanding of human anatomy and physiology that combines practical knowledge with spiritual understanding of the relationship between physical and mental health. The skilled hands of experienced masseurs work with pressure points, muscle groups, and energy pathways that promote not only physical relaxation, but psychological restoration that extends far beyond the bathhouse. Experience these massage treatments. Adapt to the individual needs and preferences of each bather, reflecting personal attention that contrasts sharply with the standardized approaches to hygiene that characterized European practices. The masseur's assessment of muscle tension, stress patterns, his physical condition guides the selection of techniques that address specific problems while contributing to overall health and well-being. The oils and aromatics used during massage treatments represent another sophisticated aspect of Ottoman hygiene understanding, with various substances selected for their therapeutic properties as well as their pleasant scents. Unlike the heavy perfumes used by Europeans to mask natural body odors, these aromatics work with the cleansing process to enhance the beneficial effects of heat, steam, and water while providing genuine therapeutic benefits. The selection of massage oils reflects seasonal considerations and individual health needs, with warming oils used during cooler months and cooling preparations preferred during hot weather. The adaptation of treatments to environmental conditions demonstrates flexible application of therapeutic principles that adjust to changing circumstances rather than rigidly following standard prescriptions, regardless of practical considerations. The herbal preparations that are often added to bathhouse waters represent the intersection of botanical knowledge with hygiene practice, creating therapeutic environments that address specific health concerns while enhancing the overall bathing experience. These additives, carefully selected and prepared by knowledgeable practitioners, transform simple washing into comprehensive health treatments that provide benefits extending far beyond surface cleanliness. The steaming process itself represents perhaps the most sophisticated aspect of Ottoman bathing technology, with carefully controlled humidity and temperature levels that provide optimal conditions for various therapeutic outcomes. The generation and distribution of steam throughout the bathhouse requires precise understanding of airflow, temperature regulation, and moisture control that creates environments beneficial to human health rather than merely comfortable for casual use. The gradual temperature progression that guides bathers through increasingly warm environments allows the body to adapt to therapeutic heat levels that provide maximum benefit while ensuring safety and comfort. This progressive exposure reflects medical understanding that recognizes the body's need for gradual adaptation to extreme conditions, rather than the sudden shock that might result from immediate exposure to maximum heat levels. The cool-down periods that punctuate the bathing process provide necessary relief from intense heat, while maintaining the therapeutic benefits of the warm treatments. The availability of cooler areas within the bathhouse allows bathers to regulate their exposure to heat according to individual tolerance and comfort levels, while ensuring that everyone can participate fully in the cleansing experience. The social aspects of the cool-down periods create opportunities for conversation and relationship, building that strengthen community bonds while providing necessary rest from the physical demands of intensive bathing. These informal gathering times facilitate the exchange of information, the resolution of community issues, and the maintenance of social relationships that extend far beyond the bathhouse. As our journey through the Ottoman world of cleanliness draws toward its peaceful conclusion, we must consider the profound lessons that this ancient civilization offers about the relationship between individual health, community welfare, and sustainable social organization. The bathhouse culture that we have explored represents more than simply an alternative approach to personal hygiene. It embodies a complete philosophy of human existence that integrates physical needs with spiritual aspirations, individual requirements with collective responsibilities, and practical necessity with aesthetic beauty in ways that create lasting solutions to fundamental human challenges. The sustainability of Ottoman bathing culture has maintained sophisticated hygiene practices for centuries while adapting to changing circumstances and evolving needs, offers striking contrast to the European approach that created increasingly elaborate and expensive solutions to problems that ultimately proved unsolvable through artificial means. The Turkish hammam achieved genuine cleanliness through methods that were accessible to all social classes. It's environmentally responsible. It's capable of continuous improvement and adaptation without fundamental structural changes. Consider the economic efficiency of the bathhouse system, which provided comprehensive hygiene services to entire communities, using shared infrastructure that no individual household could afford to duplicate independently. The communal approach to cleanliness achieved economies of scale that made sophisticated bathing facilities, professional massage services, therapeutic treatments, and high-quality textile care available to ordinary people who would otherwise have been limited to the most primitive hygiene practices. This economic model demonstrates how collective investment in public health infrastructure can achieve better outcomes for all participants than individual attempts to address hygiene needs through private means. The bathhouse system provided superior services at lower per-person costs while creating employment opportunities and supporting specialized knowledge development that benefited entire communities rather than just wealthy individuals. The environmental sustainability of Ottoman bathing practices reflects sophisticated understanding of resource management that minimized waste while maximizing beneficial outcomes. The efficient use of water, fuel, and other resources through careful system design and operation achieved comprehensive cleanliness services without the environmental degradation that characterize many other approaches to large-scale hygiene provision. The water recycling systems that characterize advanced bathhouses captured and reused heated water through multiple stages of the bathing process, reducing fuel consumption while maintaining optimal temperatures for different therapeutic applications. These systems achieved remarkable efficiency in resource utilization that exceeded contemporary European practices and anticipated modern environmental management principles by several centuries. The fuel efficiency achieved through sophisticated architectural design and thermal management systems minimized the environmental impact of heating large bathing facilities while maintaining optimal conditions for health and comfort. The use of thermal mass, strategic ventilation, and heat recovery systems created energy-efficient operations that demonstrated advanced understanding of environmental engineering principles. The waste management systems associated with bathhouses integrated hygiene facility operations with broader urban sanitation systems in ways that addressed public health concerns while minimizing environmental impact. The sophisticated drainage and sewage handling that supported bathhouse operations often provided infrastructure benefits that extended far beyond the bathing facilities themselves. The social integration achieved through bathhouse culture created community bonds that strengthened social cohesion while providing practical support for individual health and welfare needs. The regular interaction between community members in the context of shared cleanliness activities fostered mutual understanding, cooperation, and assistance that extended into other areas of social and economic life. The cross-class interaction that characterized bathhouse culture provided opportunities for social mobility and knowledge transfer that would have been impossible in more rigidly segregated social environments. The temporary suspension of social hierarchies. Then the democratic space of the bathhouse created conditions where individuals could demonstrate personal qualities and capabilities that might otherwise remain hidden behind class distinctions. The women's bathhouse culture, in particular, provided social and educational opportunities that were rare in other contexts, creating informal networks of mutual support, information exchange, and skill development that empowered female participants while strengthening community resilience. The all-female environment of women's bathing sessions facilitated discussions and activities that would have been impossible in mixed social settings. The educational aspects of bathhouse participation provided practical training in health maintenance, social cooperation, and community responsibility that prepared individuals for effective participation in broader social and economic systems. The knowledge and skills acquired through bathhouse culture contributed to personal development and social competence that extended far beyond hygiene practices. The cultural continuity achieved through bathhouse traditions demonstrated how sustainable social practices could adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining essential functions and beneficial outcomes. The ability of bathhouse culture to evolve and improve over centuries while preserving core principles and practices offers insights into the development of resilient social institutions. The therapeutic knowledge preserved and developed within bathhouse culture represented sophisticated understanding of human health that integrated physical, psychological, and social factors in comprehensive approaches to individual and community welfare. The accumulated wisdom of bathhouse practitioners often exceeded the theoretical knowledge of formal medical establishments, while achieving better practical outcomes for ordinary people. The integration of hygiene practices with spiritual and cultural activities created holistic approaches to human development that addressed multiple aspects of individual and social needs through coordinated activities and shared experiences. The bathhouse served not only as a place for physical cleansing, but as a center for spiritual renewal, social interaction, and cultural transmission. The architectural achievements of Ottoman bathhouse design demonstrate how functional requirements can be integrated with aesthetic aspirations to create built environments that serve practical needs while inspiring and uplifting those who use them. The beauty of bathhouse architecture enhanced the experience of cleanliness while creating community landmarks that fostered civic pride and social identity. The technological innovations developed within bathhouse culture contributed to broader understanding of engineering, architecture, and environmental management that had applications extending far beyond hygiene facilities. The knowledge and skills developed through bathhouse construction and operation supported technological advancement in multiple areas of Ottoman civilization. The international influence of Ottoman bathing culture, which spread throughout the Mediterranean world and into Europe through cultural exchange and diplomatic contact, demonstrates how superior social practices can transcend political and religious boundaries when they offer genuine benefits to human welfare. The adoption of Turkish bathing practices in other cultural contexts shows how sustainable solutions to universal human problems can achieve widespread acceptance. The contrast between Ottoman and European approaches to cleanliness reveals fundamental differences in cultural attitudes toward the human body, individual versus collective responsibility, and the relationship between appearance and substance that shaped entire civilizations in different directions. The comparison offers insights into how basic assumptions about human nature and social organization can lead to dramatically different outcomes in addressing universal human needs. The decline of traditional bathhouse culture in many regions reflects the complex relationship between modernization and the preservation of sustainable social practices. The replacement of traditional communal bathing with individual household facilities often resulted in higher costs, reduced social benefits, and environmental problems that the older systems had successfully avoided. The contemporary revival of interest in traditional bathing practices demonstrates growing recognition that modern hygiene approaches may have lost important benefits that characterized older systems. The integration of traditional bathhouse principles with modern technology and understanding offers opportunities for developing improved approaches to personal and community health. As our long journey through the labyrinthine approaches to cleanliness in the 18th century draws to its gentle close, settle back into the comfortable certainty of your contemporary life, where the simple act of turning a handle releases clean, warm water that flows without question or fear. Feel the reassuring solidity of your modern bathroom, with its gleaming surfaces that can be cleaned with effective soaps, sufficient ventilation that removes moisture without trapping dangerous vapors, and its sanitation systems that dispose of waste without creating the underground archaeological deposits that will puzzle future generations. The contrasts we have explored between your world and that distant era reveal more than mere historical curiosity. They illuminate the profound ways in which basic assumptions about human nature, social responsibility, and the relationship between individual welfare and collective prosperity shape entire civilizations and determine whether societies develop sustainable solutions to universal human challenges or create increasingly elaborate problems that eventually overwhelm their capacity to maintain artificial appearances of success. Reflect now on the morning routine that began our exploration, where we experienced the elaborate daily construction of artificial cleanliness that transformed natural human beings into powdered artworks bearing little resemblance to their underlying biological reality. Consider how that ritualistic denial of physical existence created a culture so divorced from practical necessity that its highest achievements were built upon foundations of accumulated human waste that its inhabitants could neither acknowledge nor effectively address. The tragic irony of European 18th century hygiene philosophy lay not simply in its ineffectiveness, but in how its pursuit of ethereal perfection actually created conditions that were more unsanitary than those it sought to transcend. The elaborate systems of powder, perfume, artificial construction required such tremendous investments of time, money, and human effort that they consumed resources that might otherwise have been directed toward addressing the practical problems of sanitation, health maintenance, community welfare that no amount of surface beautification could ultimately solve. The court of Versailles, which we visited in all its perfumed magnificence, represents perhaps the most complete expression of what happens when societies choose appearance over substance, theory over practical experience, and individual fantasy over collective reality. The palace that was intended to demonstrate the pinnacle of human refinement became instead a monument to the fundamental impossibility of achieving true civilization through artificial means that ignore or deny the basic requirements of human existence. The archaeological record beneath Paris, which spoke to us with the honest voice of buried truth, revealed how even ordinary citizens who lacked the resources for elaborate artificial constructions lived in conditions that reflected the same basic philosophical errors that characterize the most elevated social circles. The gap between surface appearance and underground reality affected all levels of society, creating public health problems that no individual household could address alone, and that the existing social and political systems seemed unable to acknowledge, much less solve effectively. Yet, our journey also revealed the existence of alternative approaches to human cleanliness that achieved remarkable success using principles that modern understanding can recognize as scientifically sound, environmentally sustainable, and socially beneficial. The Ottoman bathhouse culture demonstrated how societies that embrace rather than deny human physicality can develop solutions to basic needs that serve multiple purposes while strengthening rather than weakening the social bonds that make civilized life possible. The contrast between European powder and perfume culture and Ottoman water and steam culture reveals fundamental differences in basic assumptions about human nature that led to dramatically different outcomes in addressing identical biological requirements. Where European philosophy viewed the human body as a source of shame and contamination requiring constant disguise, Ottoman culture treated physicality as a divine gift deserving careful attention and respectful maintenance through practices that enhanced rather than denied natural human characteristics. The sustainability of traditional bathing culture, which maintained effective hygiene practices for centuries while adapting to changing circumstances, offers striking contrast to European approaches that created increasingly expensive and elaborate solutions to problems that ultimately proved unsolvable through artificial means. The democratic accessibility of bathhouse services provided superior hygiene to all social classes, while creating employment opportunities and supporting knowledge development that benefited entire communities. The economic efficiency of communal bathing systems achieved economies of scale that made sophisticated hygiene infrastructure accessible to ordinary people, while the individualistic European approach limited effective cleanliness to those wealthy enough to afford elaborate private constructions. The collective investment in public health infrastructure demonstrated how shared responsibility for common needs can achieve better outcomes for everyone than individual attempts to address universal challenges through private means. The environmental sustainability of Ottoman hygiene practices reflected sophisticated understanding of resource management that minimized waste while maximizing beneficial outcomes, contrasting sharply with European systems that consumed vast quantities of materials to achieve results that were ultimately both ineffective and unsustainable. The integration of hygiene facilities with broader urban infrastructure created synergies that benefited entire communities rather than creating the environmental problems that characterized European waste management approaches. The social integration achieved through bathhouse culture strengthened community bonds while providing practical support for individual health and welfare needs, demonstrating how shared activities that address universal human requirements can foster cooperation and mutual assistance that extends into other areas of social and economic life. The temporary suspension of social hierarchies within the democratic space of the bathhouse created opportunities for cross-class interaction and knowledge transfer that would have been impossible in more rigidly segregated social environments. Therapeutic knowledge preserved and developed within bathhouse culture represented sophisticated understanding of human health that often exceeded the theoretical knowledge of formal medical establishments while achieving better practical outcomes for ordinary people. The integration of physical, psychological, and social factors in comprehensive approaches to individual and community welfare demonstrated holistic thinking that anticipated modern understanding of the interconnection between different aspects of human health and social functioning. The architectural achievements of bathhouse design showed how functional requirements could be integrated with aesthetic aspirations to create built environments that served practical needs while inspiring and uplifting those who used them. The beauty of bathhouse architecture enhanced the experience of cleanliness while creating community landmarks that fostered civic pride and social identity, contrasting with European approaches that hid or minimized the infrastructure necessary for addressing basic human needs. The international influence of Ottoman bathing practices, which spread throughout the Mediterranean world and into Europe through cultural exchange, demonstrated how superior solutions to universal human problems could transcend political and religious boundaries when they offered genuine benefits to human welfare. The adoption of Turkish bathing practices in other cultural contexts showed how sustainable approaches to fundamental challenges could achieve widespread acceptance when they provided clear advantages over existing alternatives. The lessons revealed through our exploration of these contrasting approaches to cleanliness extend far beyond historical interest, offering guidance for contemporary challenges related to public health, social organization, environmental sustainability, and community development. The principles that made traditional bathhouse culture successful remain relevant to modern efforts to create sustainable, equitable, and effective solutions to basic human needs that continue to challenge societies around the world. The recognition that individual health depends on community welfare, that sustainable practices require long-term thinking rather than short-term convenience, and that technological sophistication must be balanced with environmental responsibility all find expression in the traditional wisdom that achieved remarkable success over many centuries, while European alternatives created increasingly complex problems that ultimately proved unsolvable. The understanding that social institutions must serve real human needs rather than abstract theoretical principles that successful systems require flexibility and adaptation rather than rigid adherence to fixed rules, and that sustainable solutions often emerge from the integration of multiple perspectives and approaches rather than the dominance of single viewpoints. All characterize approaches that achieve lasting success in addressing fundamental human challenges. The democratic principles that governed effective hygiene systems, where participation was based on common human needs rather than social status, where knowledge and skills were shared rather than hoarded, and where individual welfare was understood to depend on collective health and prosperity, offer insights into the development of more equitable and effective social institutions that could address contemporary challenges more successfully than approaches based on individual competition and private accumulation of resources. The integration of practical functionality with spiritual meaning, individual development with community responsibility, and immediate needs with long-term sustainability demonstrated how human societies could develop comprehensive approaches to fundamental challenges that served multiple purposes and provided multiple benefits through coordinated activities and shared resources that maximized efficiency while minimizing waste and environmental impact. As you rest now in the comfort of your contemporary life, surrounded by the taken for granted conveniences of modern sanitation and hygiene, consider how the lessons of history might inform current approaches to challenges that continue to affect human societies around the world. The problems of public health, environmental sustainability, social equity, and community development that characterized the 18th century continue to require solutions that balance individual needs with collective welfare, practical necessity with cultural values, and immediate convenience with long-term consequences. The wisdom preserved in the contrast between different historical approaches to universal human needs offers guidance for contemporary efforts to create more sustainable, equitable, and effective solutions to problems that affect entire communities and future generations. The recognition that the most sophisticated solutions often emerge from the integration of practical knowledge with cultural understanding, individual initiative with collective cooperation, and technological capability with environmental responsibility remains as relevant today as it was in the era we have explored together. The gentle conclusion of our journey through the diverse world of 18th century cleanliness practices leaves us with a deeper appreciation for the complexity of human civilization and the profound importance of the choices that societies make about how to address the most basic requirements of civilized existence. The approaches we have examined reveal the lasting consequences of fundamental assumptions about human nature, social responsibility, and the relationship between appearance and substance that continue to influence contemporary culture and policy. The comfort of modern life, with its reliable access to clean water, effective sanitation, and scientifically based hygiene practices, represents the culmination of centuries of human learning and social development that built upon both the successes and failures of previous generations. The convenience of contemporary cleanliness reflects not only technological advancement, but social choices about collective investment in public health infrastructure, environmental protection, and community welfare that make individual comfort and security possible. Yet, the lessons of history remind us that even the most advanced civilizations remain vulnerable to the fundamental challenges of balancing individual desires with collective needs, short-term convenience with long-term sustainability, cultural aspirations with biological realities that no amount of technological sophistication can completely transcend. The eternal human requirement for cleanliness, community, sustainable social organization continues to demand wisdom, cooperation, and humility that acknowledge both human capabilities and human limitations. As sleep approaches and consciousness begins its gentle drift toward dreams, carry with you the understanding that the simple act of cleanliness connects you to centuries of human experience, struggle, and achievement that have shaped the world you inhabit. The warm water that flows from your faucet, the effective soap that cleanses your skin, and the sanitary systems that manage waste represent not just technological achievements, but social accomplishments that required cooperation, wisdom, and commitment to collective welfare. That transcended individual interests and short-term thinking in the comfort of your clean bed, with fresh linens that have been properly washed rather than merely disguised with powder and perfume. Rest peacefully in the knowledge that human civilization has slowly learned, through trial and error, success and failure, wisdom and folly, to create solutions to fundamental challenges that serve real human needs, while respecting the environmental limits and social requirements that make sustainable prosperity possible for all members of the community. The gentle rhythm of your breathing, the clean air that surrounds you, and the secure comfort of your hygienic environment represent the culmination of centuries of human learning about how to live well together in the world, balancing individual needs with collective responsibility, practical necessity with cultural aspirations, and immediate comfort with long-term sustainability that will allow future generations to enjoy even greater health, security, and prosperity than we have achieved in our own time.